Okay, so for part 3 of our lecture 4, ratio rates and proportion. So incidence and prevalence. So ano ba yung ating incidence and prevalence? So incidence is the measure of events that transitions from a non-diseased state to a diseased state. So ibig sabihin walang sakit papunta sa mga nagkaroon ng sakit. So acute conditions, accidents, attack rate, cause rate, sickness rate, and morbidity rate. So incidence is a measure of risk. So it is the number of new cases discovered in the population during the given period of time over the number of persons who are at risk of developing the disease during that period of time. So factors, again, constant. So average population is the major population. So kapag may tinutukoy or may sinasabing average population, yung tinutukoy natin dun is mid-year population. Okay, so ang incidence is yung number from 0 to nagkaroon ng sakit. So halimbawa, COVID. So from wala tayong COVID cases, so 0 yon. So nagkaroon ng 50. So may incidence rate ko computent. Yung 0 to 50, yung 50, yun yung ating number of new cases. I-divide mo sa kung ilan yung possible at risk. So, possible at risk yung population ng isang lugar na yun. So, for example natin doon is 50 divided by population ng Philippines. So, incidence rate. Pwede nating ma-measure gamit yun. Okay, so incidence, there are two types of denominators. People who are at risk. People at risk who are observed throughout a definite time period. So all the individuals in the group have been followed up by the entire period. So cumulative incidence. Incidence calculated using a period of time which all of the individuals in the population are considered to be at risk of the outcome. So lahat ng population ang considered dito. Next. When all people are not observed for the full time period, person time years or units of time with each person is observed. So incidence density. So denominator consists of the sum of the the units of time the individual was at risk and was observed. So oras yung ginagamit natin na denominator dito. Incidence per 100 or per 1,000. Okay, so malimit ginagamit is yung per population. Okay, so when all the people are not observed for the full period or person time, or the unit of time for each person is observed. So verb B is the total person time, or the sum of time periods of all observations of each individual who has been observed for all of the part of the entire period. So hindi lahat yung ginagamit dito. Ang ginagamit lang dito ay yung person time years with the formula of number of new cases discovered in the population during the given time or the given period of time. Okay, person time. So, paano ba kina-compute yun? Calculating combining person and times. Sums of individual using units of time that people have been exposed to the risk event. Used in the denominator of person time rates. Often used in epidemiology and vital statistics. Okay, so ito yon. Pero hindi na natin ito gagamitin. Masyado itong complex. It's just nice to know for you. Okay, so tinutukoy kasi ng person time years na yun kung gano'ng katagal na exposed yung isang individual. Okay, so for example, suppose during a 2-year period of time, 10 episodes of diarrhea at a daycare center was reported. 35 children attended the daycare center for varying fractions of the 2-year time period for a total of 50 child years. So, kumbaga kung ilan or kung gaano kalimit yung nandun. So, R, 10 diarrheal episodes. Kasi 10 yung na-collect natin na data doon. So, 50 child years of observation. So, 0.12 episodes per child year. Hindi naman natin siya masyadong gagamitin. Okay, so dito na tayo. So, absolute changes in two rates. So, ito yung sa kung gaano katagal. Then, yung ating oras na nandun. So, 307, 1153. So, negative 146 or absolute disease in incidence or 846 per 100,000 person years. Okay, so don't mind these slides. Hindi natin yan isasama. Okay, so incidence ulit. So mortality is the incidence of death in the population at risk. All people or a subset of the population. Morbidity. Ito yung incidence of particular illness rather than death. So pag mortality, ilan yung namatay. Morbidity, yung illness lang, exposed as percentage. Case fatality rate. Preceding illness is responsible for mortality. So, proportion. So, kumbaga, based dito sa illness na to, o per case, so halimbawa TB, dengue, COVID yun. So, case fatality rate, depending on the case. Attack rate is the population that has been exposed to a potentially toxic setting. Kumbaga, kung gaano kabilis kakalat or gaano kadami yung exposed din doon. So, prevalence. So, prevalence per 1,000. So, constant yan. Pwede yung mapalitan. So, A is the number of cases of a disease present in the population at a specified time. B is the number of persons or population in the specified time. So, prevalence naman is kung ilan or gaano katagal nandun yung sakit or condition. Point prevalence is prevalence of the disease at a certain point of time. Period prevalence, how many people have had the disease at any point during that certain time period. So, yung pinagkaiba niya, point is time, period is kung ilan yung tao. Note, when we say the word prevalence used without any modifier, it generally refers to point prevalence. So, pag binabanggit ang prevalence at walang sinabing ibang modifier or ibang adjective to describe it, is as period prevalence. So, point prevalence yung ating tinutukoy. Okay. So, number of cases of specified disease at a time and total population at a time. Diba, yung ating incidence, yung number of new cases. Ito naman, number of total cases, old and the new. So, pag period prevalence, wala. Isang time period yung ating nilagay dito. Okay, so ito at a specified time. Ito naman at a given period. So, total population in the time period. Okay. Paano ba ang ibig sabihin talaga ng incidence at prevalence na yun? Okay. So, meron tayong, halimbawa, ito yung ating population. So, per bilog, assume natin isang tao. So, level of prevalence in the population. So, halimbawa, ilan yung may diabetes? Yan. So, tingnan natin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Halimbawa, 15. Yan. 15 yung may diabetes na sa isang community. Dumating si incidence. So, incidence, ibig sabihin na dagdagan or nagkaroon ng bagong cases. B, increased prevalence resulting from incidence. So, yung prevalence niya, ito lang dati, dadagdag lahat. Yan na lahat na may diabetes. Pero yung incidence natin, yung bagong cases, yun na dagdag na bago. Prevalence, total. Decreased prevalence resulting from death and old or cures. So, kapag walang incidence or walang bagong cases, nababa or pwede bumaba yung prevalence either from deaths or cures. So, namatay na iba, yung iba naman gumaling. So, minsan, equal ang prevalence. Hindi siya nababago kahit may dumadagdag na bago. Kasi, pwedeng pareho yung dinadagdag at pareho din yung nababawas. Overall impact of prevalence of incidence, deaths, and cure. So, prevalence can remain the same if incidence is equal to the deaths and the cures. So, paano bang isa pang example nan? Okay, tingnan maigi ang ating lines. So, ibig sabihin nito, galing pa dito. So, January 2012, halimbawa, isang ganito is may dengue. Isang line. Okay, so ilan yung prevalence natin ng may dengue? So, 1, 2, 3. So, may tatlo tayong baseline prevalence. Ilan ang ating prevalence noong December 2012? 1, 2. So, dadalwa na. Ibig sabihin, nabawasan tayo. So, nabawasan yung may dengue, may isang namatay, may dalawang nag-cure. So, isang namatay, dalawang na-cure, dapat 0 na. Hindi. Kasi yung isa, nasa mid-year siya, then, yung isa naman, nadagdag. So, parang napaltan lang, yung isa natin, then yung isa gumaling. More example. Okay, prevalence nung January 2012, 1, 2, 3. So, meron tayong tatlo. Prevalence nung May, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, 5 na, nadagdagan ng dalawa. So, ito yung dalawa is yung new incidence, 1, 2. Okay, pagdating ng July, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, 4. Nabawasan ng isa kasi namatay siya before mag-July. Pagdating ng September, 1, 2, 3. So, 3 yung prevalence kasi nabawasan ng isa, gumaling na. And pagdating ng December 2012, may dalawa pang cases na prevailing sa isang community. Okay. Concepts of incidence and prevalence. So, incidence is acute conditions or accidents, attack rate, case rate, sickness rate, and morbidity rate. Kumbaga, ilan yung nadadagdag? How frequent do cases of particular disease occur during a given period of time? Prevalence naman, kung ilan yung nandun na talaga. So, concepts of incidence and prevalence ang tandaan. Incidence is a measure of risk kasi risk yung nadadagdag na bago. Prevalence naman is burden of the disease kasi nasa iyo na yon. Kumbaga, yun na yung nagpapahirap or yung iyong burden doon. Analysis of rates, errors in the denominator. Kapag ang denominator being used is underestimated, kasi usually estimation tayo dito sa ating biostatistics, the rate becomes bigger. If the denominator being used is overestimated, the rate becomes smaller. So, pag wrong denominator becomes frequency distribution and not a rate. So, mga common errors. So, analysis of error. What the numerator and the denominator are and how accurately were they obtained. So, sa gathering or sa data sampling, nakabase sa lahat. So, pag mali na yung data mo, mali lahat yung iyong magagamit. What is the time period involved? What is the rate intended to measure? So, depende kasi kung ano yung kailangan mo. What rates are being compared or are comparable? So, errors in the numerator naman, overcounting and undercounting. So, that concludes our lesson 4, ratio rates and proportion. Thank you.